He threw a leg across that iron horse and pulled the throttle down. A million things rushing through his mind like that rumbling sound. Living life in his own eyes, direction isn't clear. So searching all these years.
Welcome everyone to Answers from Mars Hill. This is Pastor Ski of the Russian Wind Biker Church in Holbrook, New York. I'm the New York State Elder for Bikers of Christ Motorcycle Ministry and the founding pastor of the Russian Wind Biker Church. I want to thank you all for tuning in. For those who are tuning in for the first time, just to let you know what this show, the purpose of this show is to have a conversation, create some dialogue, hopefully between people that are not of the Christian faith, and just kind of to give you information, maybe answer some of your questions, some of your anger issues. There are people who have been traumatized by the church at times in their life, and they've turned from Christianity. And then there's those that are out there that are just skeptics and atheists, and they don't want to delve into a realm of faith, and sometimes there's an animosity towards people within this Christian realm. And so I hope through this show that I can at least speak to those issues, get people out there to understand why people like myself have stepped into this realm of faith, and just so we can have a dialogue, answer some questions. As far as the big picture, just love each other a little more and not condemn us for our beliefs and vice versa. So what I'm going to do today is, last week I started a conversation on the question, does God exist? I laid down a little bit of groundwork last week, and this week I want to go through a lot of detailed information from secular science, and also to discuss some of the problems with there being the thought of there is no God within the realm of science, archaeology, and physics. But what I want to do is start with a quote I ended with last week from C.S. Lewis. And C.S. Lewis once remarked that God is not the sort of thing that one can be modestly interested in. After all, if God does not exist, then there's no reason to be interested in God at all. On the other hand, if God does exist, then it's of paramount interest. And our ultimate concern ought to be how to properly be related to this being upon whom we depend moment by moment, even for our very existence. C.S. Lewis asked, what difference does it make if God exists? That question itself only shows people haven't really considered the implications and the ramifications of this question. Even atheist philosophers like French philosophers Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus thought very seriously about this problem, and they admit that the existence of God makes a tremendous difference for man. Last week I spoke about personal discovery, that people should do their own quest and not accept prejudicial influence of all the things around us, whether they're pro-God or anti-God. All the things that hinder us absolutely wanting to wrestle this question to the ground, the visible versus the invisible reality that's all around us. 3 reasons that it makes a big difference if there is a God or if there isn't a God. The first one is without God, life is ultimately meaningless. If God doesn't exist, life has no meaning. If your life is doomed to end in death, then ultimately it doesn't matter how you live your life. In the end, it doesn't even matter if you existed. You may gain some relative significance by influencing others or even the course of history, but ultimately mankind is doomed to die in the heat death of the universe. So it makes no difference who you are or what you do. Your life is pretty much inconsequential. Even all the contributions of science and scientists to increase knowledge and medical research of doctors to lessen the pain and suffering, even efforts of diplomats to secure peace in the world, sacrifices good people make for the betterment of the human race, all that ultimately comes to nothing. If atheism is true and there is no God, then life ultimately is meaningless. In the Bible, there's a book written by one of the kings of Israel, Solomon, who was a son of David. This book is called Ecclesiastes, and really the backdrop and the attitude of this particular book is how meaningless life is if there was no God. See, Solomon's father, David, was a man who was very connected to God. The Bible says he was a man after God's own heart. And so he was very connected, very spiritual minded, and had a personal connection to God. But his son Solomon, even though he was reigning over a period that had peace, prosperity, was rich, had anything he wanted, he always had this emptiness because he didn't have the relationship with God that his father did. You know, you almost think that he didn't really think there was a God. He just stepped into the place of being the king of God's people. But as far as the faith, the belief in what God's people were about, you almost get the impression he wasn't connected in that way. And the book of Ecclesiastes really is a very depressing, dark viewpoint of looking at life. And he lists all the things he had, and you know, what's the point of having everything in the world and working your whole life, and when you're gone it goes to someone else, and all these aspects of life. And if there is no God and there is no purpose, that everything is pretty much meaningless. The second thing is, without God, we actually live in a realm with no hope. If God does not exist, we must ultimately live without hope. If there's no God, there's ultimately no hope from the deliverance of any of the shortcomings of this finite existence we have in the human race. For instance, there's no hope for being delivered from evil. Although many ask how God would create a world involving so much evil, by far most suffering in the world is due to man's humanity to man. You know, we look alone at the horror of 2 world wars during the 20th century. And if we look around the world now, what's happening in parts of the world, and even right now in the tension and the splitting of our country, and the hate, all these things have kind of killed the thought that maybe humanity is actually progressing. But it's not. It's actually still in this place of evil. If God doesn't exist, then we're locked without hope in a world filled with pretty much gratuitous and unredeemed suffering, with no hope of deliverance from any of this evil. Also, if God is not a reality, then there's no deliverance from aging, disease, and death. The sober facts is someday all of us, some young, some old, some will die of diseases, some of a fatal traumatic incident. Some may deal with senility, disease, deterioration, but all of you out there are going to die one day. It's just inevitable. And so if there's no afterlife beyond the grave, atheism is a philosophy that ultimately has no hope. If God does exist, there is some kind of answers, hope, and maybe some meaning to this life, and just perhaps an opportunity of coming to know Him, possibly personally, and perhaps discover He actually cares about us and has a plan for us. Clearly, if God exists, it makes not only a tremendous difference for mankind in general, but it could be a life-changing difference for any one of you out there, and something I've pretty much experienced in my life. Paramount to this conversation of the existence of God is, can there be proof? Or does it make sense because it's the best or more logical of opinions? The idea of God actually makes sense of this universe. Science for a while has reasoned that the universe must have had a beginning. Mathematically, as well as observationally, they have the technology now that seeing the movement of the universe and its expansion, that it must have had a beginning point that all things since have been moving away from. And so it's expanding, and there must have been a point where it all began to exist. There's also discoveries in astronomy and astrophysics that have confirmed that the universe is not eternal. It has had an absolute beginning that they surmise was about 13 billion years ago in a cataclysmic event called the Big Bang. What's startling is this represents the origin of the universe literally from nothing. When I dove into this faith and started to have my eyes open and really had these questions answered through my personal discovery, whether it's through science, whether it's through archaeology, kind of diving into the history of Christianity, I started to get a picture of something that didn't make sense without an ultimate architect, an ultimate creator. Several things within the realm of our creation that have really caused me to have no choice but to believe that someone had to be the designer, the ultimate architect and creator of everything that we see, particularly humanity in general. Also, as I've come to kind of get closer to God through this faith, I've also come to the point where every day I walk around and I look around and I see the evidences of a living God all around me. And I think once you kind of step into that kind of perspective, you can look around and you see things through a different lens. The Bible talks about having an eye to see and an ear to hear, and a lot of that is being aware of everything around us and how we can see how God is involved in almost everything. And so when we come back after this first break, I want to talk about some pretty technical science information. I'm going to go into the universe. I'm going to go into the Earth, and several reasons why this cannot be a cosmic accident and something that, as science says, happened randomly. So when we come back from a word from our sponsors, I want to delve into some technical information.
Hey everybody, this is Motorcycle Mike, the personal injury lawyer. I've been riding motorcycles my entire adult life. During the course of my 30-year career as a lawyer, I've also represented countless injured motorcyclists. If you're one of them, I can be of assistance to you. Go to my website, please, motorcyclemikeesq.com. I'll always be there for you. I'm on your side when you ride.
Hi, my name is Sharon Gillette, and I'm the owner of One Stitch at a Time. I've been doing this since I'm 9 years old, but it became full-time when my husband was diagnosed with cancer several years ago. And I never went back to work because I wanted to take care of him. I feel what makes me stand out is that I care. I take a personal interest in your project. I take the time to find your correct fit and treat you like a friend, not just a customer. So whether it's embroidery, making patches, printing shirts, doing alterations and repairs, or bringing your ideas to life, you can call me at 631-428-1245 or visit my website at www.onestitchatatime.co.
Welcome back to Answers from Mars Hill. We're in the middle of a discussion on whether God exists or not. And we're talking about the Big Bang Theory. And the Big Bang Theory believes that all matter and all energy itself came into being at the Big Bang. Paul Davies, a theoretical physicist and cosmologist, and also actually an astrobiologist, explained that the coming into being of the universe, as discussed by modern science, is not just a matter of imposing some sort of organization upon a previously incoherent state, but literally the coming into being of all physical things from absolutely nothing. Also, Russian cosmologist Alexander Vilenkin, along with two other colleagues, were able to prove that any universe which is on average in a state of cosmic expansion cannot be eternal in the past, but must have some absolute beginning. And last but not least, Anthony Kenny of Oxford University wrote that a proponent of the Big Bang Theory, at least if he is an atheist, must believe that the universe came from nothing by nothing. So anyway, the Big Bang Theory is really a good description of chemically, physically, and biologically all the things that had to happen and come into place that created this realm we live in called the universe. And a basic line of reasoning says whatever began to exist must have had a cause. And so the Big Bang Theory proves that the universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe must have had a cause. So given the truth of these premises, the conclusion has to be that from the nature of this particular case, this cause must have been an uncaused, changeless, timeless, and immaterial being which created the universe. It must be uncaused because there can't be an infinite regress of causes. It's mathematically impossible. It must be timeless and therefore changeless, at least without the universe, because it created time. And because the Big Bang Theory also created space, it must transcend space as well, and therefore be immaterial, or spiritual, if you will, and not physical. Because even within the secular atheistic way of looking at the Big Bang Theory, all time, space, and matter came into being in this one moment. So the question is, what was before that moment? See, the only way for the cause to be timeless and the effect to be in time is that the cause has to come from a personal agent who freely chooses to create an effect in time without any prior determining conditions. So whatever or whoever created this explosion that created the universe has to be outside of time, has to be outside of space, and has to be outside of material, because there was nothing before there was something. So there have actually been other theories that have come and gone also. One is the eternal universe, which believes multiple beginnings in different places, multiple Big Bangs, all irrelevant of each other, but that theory in itself doesn't answer many of the tough questions and kind of has been discarded. There's also been a theory of a cyclical universe, that the universe expands and collapses and starts all over again, but this doesn't answer the very question of the beginning of the universe coming from nothing. And then there's a theory that's been called the emergent universe, which talks about a static universe that sits forever and somehow bursts open and starts expanding, but still needs to have a beginning, and what triggers that expansion event. And this ends up bringing up more questions than even the Big Bang Theory. And so the Big Bang Theory remains when time, space, and matter came into existence from nothing. And it's interesting when we look at this from a theistic viewpoint, when we look into some things that are in this book called the Bible, which is the book of our faith. In Hebrews chapter 11, verse 3, it says, by faith we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what was seen was made out of what was not made out of what was visible. I'll say that again. So what is seen was not made out of what was visible. And you start to realize that these statements in the Bible coincide with science. See, science really, if you dig into the truth of science, it goes to prove more things in the Bible than you would understand. And when you start to look at, which we're going to talk about a little bit now, the theories of the Big Bang Theory, randomness, how the universe just kind of assembled itself. We're going to go through a couple of different points. You come to a conclusion, though, which theory actually does it take more faith to believe in? That we actually have a creator that created this universe, or if we have all these random chemical reactions, random interactions that just by chance moved in a direction and created everything we know. And one final point on the universe. There's an astrophysicist, Robert Jastrow, who was a self-described agnostic. And he said the seed of everything that has happened in the universe was planted with the first instant. Every star, every planet, every living creature in the universe came into being as a result of events that were set in motion in the moment of the cosmic explosion. The universe flashed into being, and we cannot find out what caused that to happen. Also, a man named Steven Weinberg, a Nobel laureate in physics, said at the moment of this explosion, the universe was about 100,000 million degrees centigrade, and the universe was filled with light. Now, these are not men of faith, and this was their description of what happened at the Big Bang. The universe has not always existed. They're pretty much convinced of that. It had a start, and the question is what caused that start. And scientists have no explanation for the sudden explosion of light and matter. And I just want to draw your attention to actually the beginning of the Bible. In Genesis, we see the first created statement of God as He created everything that was created, one step at a time, over 7 days. What those 7 days are, I will show on that up the road. So Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 to 3 says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And so, again, you see, in a very simple statement in the scriptures of the Bible, is everything that man has put together as the origins of the universe. One big explosion of intensity and a light that came from nothing, that was the birth of everything that we know and everything that we see. Another quote from that man, Robert Jastrow. He said, "For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, this story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountain of ignorance. He's about to conquer the highest peak. And as he pulls himself over the final rock, he's greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there waiting for centuries." Glasgow also said, "Now we see how the astronomical evidence supports the biblical view of the origin of the earth. The details differ, but the essential elements in the astronomical and biblical accounts of Genesis are pretty much the same. The chain of events leading to man commenced suddenly and sharply, and in a definite moment in time, in a flash of light and a flash of energy." What we're going to talk about after this next break, and really for the balance of the show, is something called intention. We live in a time where this is kind of a catchword that is used for all kinds of life purposes, and everything we do and the direction we go is intentional. Everything we do is intentional, meaning that nothing happens and we don't do anything unless there is intent, and there is something that we're looking to achieve through that. And so everything we do in our life is to be intentional, not random, so that we can accomplish what our life is supposed to accomplish. And so what I want to talk about for the next segment of the show, and maybe through the end of the show, is how intentional creation is. We're going to take several aspects of just our universe, the created order, our planet, and we're going to talk about the seeming intention of how it's created, different aspects of it, how we live in a symbiotic relationship with this planet, even as human beings. We have a relationship with the plant life. We breathe out oxygen, and the plant life breathes out. We breathe in oxygen. Plant life breathes out oxygen and breathes in carbon dioxide. And so we have this symbiotic relationship that we need each other. And there are so many aspects of this relationship we have with a planet that, from my aspect of faith, I believe was created for us. That we're going to see that there's a lot of intentionality in what science says was random. But if there is a creator, we're going to see that a lot of things actually have an intent on how they're put together, how they work, and some of the very principles within the created order. So we're going to take a break, a few moments for our sponsors, and we'll be back with discussion on the intention of the created order.
Hey everybody, this is Motorcycle Mike, the personal injury lawyer. In addition to representing injured motorcyclists for over 30 years now, during that same time, I've represented countless car crash victims and construction workers injured on construction sites. If you need my assistance, go to my website, motorcyclemikeesq.com. I will always be there for you.
Welcome back to Answers from Mars Hill. This is Pastor Ski. We've been talking about the existence of God. Before we left off, I was talking about this word, intentional. And one of the problems atheists and secular-minded science has to grapple with is not just the complexity, the organization of creation, down to the basic subparticles of matter, but the fact that it appears to be coordinated, that there's been some intent, some kind of reason, and some type of creativity. And there's been no answer from the scientific community for the complexity and purposeful assembly of every aspect of our created order. The only answer they have is, even though it defies all mathematical probabilities, is that the probability is not absolutely zero. And that's the only answer that they can have, because they refuse to acknowledge the possibility of a creator. And they want to believe that random defiance of probability coming true is what they're going to put their hat on. I even heard a scientist, actually I was online, I was reading to put some content together for the show, and there was a scientist, I don't know his name, but he firmly believes in the Big Bang Theory, and everything coming from nothing. Basic science, basic thought, basic rationale says nothing comes from nothing. And so he has this philosophy that something coming from nothing actually has zero probability. That there is some, though minuscule, probability of something coming from nothing. And so you end up with just kind of craziness in how science has to come up with things when they refuse to consider that maybe there is a divine being up there that has kind of created and coordinated this whole project of the universe and humanity. And as far as like, you talk about the probability of even one or two things in creation. I brought a little piece of sticky pad here, this little piece of paper. So now if you can imagine, if there were billions of little pieces of paper that had sequential numbers from 1 to whatever billion number that is, the probability of even one segment of what science says the created order is would be the equivalent of throwing billions of pieces of paper up in the sky and having them land on the ground in a straight line in perfect sequential order. And that probability is probably greater than the probability of the Big Bang Theory and many other things actually coming in from a random source. Even the simple a simple protein that's part of our DNA. Forget the whole DNA. The probability of that being random is astronomical. And so what I want to do really for the rest of the show is I want to talk about certain aspects of our created order that seems to be intentional, that it was created for us, for the purpose of us being here, of there being life, there being humans, and that the randomness of these things seems to defy all of logic. The first thing I want to talk about is the Earth, our planet. So the Earth itself is a perfect size. The corresponding gravity holds a layer of mostly nitrogen and oxygen gas to around 50 miles above the Earth's surface. If the Earth was slightly smaller, the atmosphere would be impossible. If the Earth was slightly larger, the atmosphere would contain free hydrogen, so life wouldn't be possible, kind of like Jupiter. And so the Earth is the only planet with an atmosphere with the right mixture of gases to sustain plant, animal, and of course, human life. There's also a gravitational constant concerning the universe itself. When that Big Bang happened, there was a large explosion of momentum going out in all kinds of directions. And so that explosion had to be perfect in its impact so that everything settled into where it was meant to be, or not meant to be if you're an atheist. And if it were even 1 part in 10 to the 14th power, that's 1 with 14 zeros after it. So that probability, if it was 1 part in that, weaker in its value, then after the Big Bang Theory, there wouldn't have been enough gravitational force to result in the coalescence or the forming of the planets, the stars, the galaxies. It would just have been random stuff going in all directions. And if that explosion that created that original the original force of gravity was a bit stronger, then everything would have exploded and then came right back to kind of like the Big Bang would be followed by what can be called a big crunch. It would have went out and then come back in. And so the gravitational constant of that has really been so intricately tuned that everything could be in its place: the stars, the moons, the galaxies, and our planet. And so the Earth itself also is a perfect distance from the sun. Temperature swings roughly minus 30 to 120 degrees. If we were a hair closer to the sun, we would burn up. If we were a hair farther, we would all freeze. Even a fractional difference would make life impossible here. And all this is happening while the Earth is rotating around the sun at nearly 67,000 miles an hour, rotating on its axis, allowing the Earth to be properly warmed and cooled each day. Our moon is a perfect distance for gravitational pull. And, we don't sometimes realize it, that the moon creates our ocean tides, creates the currents so that the ocean waters don't stagnate. It keeps it fresh for the fish life and the things that need to live in there. and also keeps them from spilling over and crossing over the continents. So there's so many absolutes and constants that have no tolerance for variance that make life possible here. And these are all challenges, profound challenges to the devout atheist, because randomness, it doesn't seem to make sense, but intentionality actually does. The second thing I want to talk about is this miracle elixir called water. Water is colorless, it's odorless, it has no taste, yet nothing living can live without it. Plants, animals, human beings consist mostly of water. The human body is roughly 2/3 water. And this thing called water has unique characteristics that are suited to life being lived on this planet. The wide margin between its boiling and its freezing points allows us to live in an environment that has fluctuating temperature changes, yet it keeps our bodies at a steady 98.6 degrees. It's also a universal solvent. It can carry all kinds of chemicals, minerals, nutrients, through the tiniest of blood vessels. Water is also chemically neutral, so it doesn't affect the chemical makeup of the substances that it carries. So it enables food and medicines and minerals to be absorbed throughout our body. Another thing about water is it has a very unique surface tension, which creates the ability from water and plants to be able to flow up against gravity, bringing life to the tallest of trees. We also notice that water freezes from the top down, so in the water, fish can live below its surface. 97% of the world's water is in oceans, but there is a system, miraculously, in my viewpoint, that removes all the salt from the water. It's evaporation, forms clouds. Those clouds travel over the land to distribute fresh water over the land for the land to hydrate, to have vegetation, to help animals and humans live. And so it's a system of purification that sustains life on this planet. Kind of recycled and reused water. There's no water coming from anywhere else to our planet anytime soon, so what we have is what we have. And so there's a system within how the earth works that reprocesses, cleans, filters, and changes this substance called water to be able to be used and reused and used and reused. And so the earth itself and water are two just extraordinary things of intentionality in this creation. I want to start on talking about the human brain for a moment before this first break. How amazing how the brain can process colors, objects, temperatures, the pressure on your feet when you walk, sounds all around you. The brain holds and processes all your emotions, your thoughts, your memories, also breathing patterns, your eye and eyelid movements, hunger, and so many other things. This thing called our brain processes more than 1 million messages every second. It weighs important data, filtering out what's relatively unimportant. It also, in this filtering, allows us to focus and operate in this world. We have intelligence, we have the ability to reason, we have feelings that are produced by our brain, memories, dreams, plans, how we relate to other people. It's really a miracle that is both physical and both existential, because there are things that are beyond the realm of feel and touch and matter that are decided and also are produced in this thing called our brain. And so I want to take our last break, give our sponsors a chance to identify themselves and talk to you a little bit. And we have a last segment, and I'm going to go over a couple more things with this intentionality that our humanity is created in. So we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Hey everybody, this is Motorcycle Mike, the personal injury lawyer. I've been riding motorcycles my entire adult life. During the course of my 30-year career as a lawyer, I've also represented countless injured motorcyclists. If you're one of them, I can be of assistance to you. Go to my website, please, motorcyclemikeesq.com. I'll always be there for you. I'm on your side when you ride.
Hi, my name is Sharon Gillette, and I'm the owner of One Stitch at a Time. I've been doing this since I'm 9 years old, but it became full-time when my husband was diagnosed with cancer several years ago. And I never went back to work because I wanted to take care of him. I feel what makes me stand out is that I care. I take a personal interest in your project. I take the time to find your correct fit and treat you like a friend, not just a customer. So whether it's embroidery, making patches, printing shirts, doing alterations and repairs, or bringing your ideas to life, you can call me at 631-428-1245 or visit my website at www.onestitchatatime.co.
Hello and welcome back to Answers from Mars Hill. Again, this is Pastor Ski, and we're in a discussion of whether there's a God or not. We're in the middle of a section that talks about the seeming intention of things that are around us. I talked about the Earth, talked about the universe, and the things that are around us, and I talked about the human brain actually a little while before the break. And so I want to cover 2 or 3 more things before we close. The next thing that seems to have intention of design and intention of purpose is actually the human eye. It's one of the miracles of biology that just seems that there is so much evidence that this could not have been random in how it has been put together. The human eye distinguishes between roughly 7 million colors. It focuses and handles somewhere around 1.5 million images simultaneously. Evolution focuses on mutations and changes from within existing organisms, and that alone can't even begin to explain the initial source of the eye and also the brain, or actually the start of living organisms from non-living matter. This question that science asks is, why does the universe operate by uniform laws? There are uniform laws of nature. With much of this life, and things are pretty much uncertain, but there are certain things that we can count on to remain the same. Gravity remains constant. The Earth rotates around the Sun, rotates in the same 24 hours. The speed of light doesn't change. But why is the universe so orderly and reliable? Even the greatest scientists have been mesmerized at how strange that is. There's really no logical necessity for a universe that obeys rules, let alone rules of mathematics. Scientifically, there really is no reason the universe has to behave this way. It's very easy for scientists to imagine a universe where conditions change unpredictably from moment to moment. Things popping in and out of existence. Nobel Prize winner for quantum aerodynamics, Richard Feynman, said why nature is mathematical is a mystery. The fact that there are rules at all is kind of a miracle. And so we see that there seems to be intention on so many things in the created order. The last thing I want to talk about in the show is the DNA code. All instruction, all teaching, and all training comes with intent. I think we can kind of all agree on that. Any instruction, any teaching, any training comes with intent. If someone writes an instruction manual, they do it with a purpose. So with that in mind, every cell of our body has a very detailed instruction code, much like a miniature computer. A computer program, for instance, is made up of ones and zeros, just sequences. Examples like 0011, 01, 000, and the sequences of these ones and zeros tells the computer what to do, how they're arranged, tells that computer what thing that it's supposed to do at any given time. Now, our DNA code in each cell works very similar to this computer code. Our DNA is made up of 4 chemicals that scientists have abbreviated A, C, G, and T. They're 4 amino acids, proteins, and they're arranged in the human cell in sequences, just like the 001101 and on in a computer program. Within each cell, our DNA is sequenced, A, C, G, T, A, A, G, T, T, C, C, and on and on and on and on. And there's roughly 3 billion of these letters in each and every human cell. Just like you can program your phone to make different sounds for different reasons, the DNA instructs the cell. A 3 billion lettered program telling the cell to act in a certain way. And what it is, in essence, is a full instruction manual. Why is this amazing? How did this instruction program wind up in each human cell? That's a good question, because these aren't just chemicals. These are chemicals that instruct. They actually code in a very detailed way how and when a person's body should develop, what it should do, and what every part of the body should do at any given time. And natural biological causes completely lack any explanation when programming information is involved. You can't find instruction, precise information like this without someone intentionally constructing it. And so this is the dilemma of science. All science can do is show you what happens. How it happens, they cannot show you why it happens. Exclusive of a creator or a designer, they have no explanation for why things just are. But science is a necessary tool for humanity, so we can better understand, we can navigate this humanity and the created order. Science explains how many things work, the inner mechanisms of some of the most intricate of things in our domain. But they cannot and they will never be able to address the reality of the intention that's involved in everything around us. Basically, because that question revolves around God. A designer, a creator, they would rather believe this whole universe, this earth, you and I, that we're a random side effect of a cosmic accident, that random Big Bang. And so what they do is they spin large words with scientific existential theories, put it all together and attempt to legitimize theories that are very, very much as religious mysteries as the ones they condemn in religion and philosophies. As someone who's lived in both those worlds, I went to school for biomedical engineering, biochemistry, very scientific minded, and living in the world of faith. They're very, very much involved in faith. From my viewpoint, knowing all the intricacies and intention that appears in creation, it seems to me personally that it takes more faith to believe this is a random act of nothing, rather than believe that there is some creator, someone who actually planned this, and his intention is what we're actually living out. It's interesting when you think about sciences, even with their own science, mathematics and intelligence informs them that their very theories are impossible. Therefore, looking for the evidence for or against God, we're absolutely equal, which I think is far from the case. I think the rational thing to do, in my opinion, is to kind of believe there is a creator. It just seems to me it's totally irrational from a scientific viewpoint, with probabilities, with evidence of intention, to actually think that this would be a random occurrence of nature. And even over that, I think it's much more preferable to believe that we have some kind of destiny that has some hope, some meaningfulness, some happiness, and not random, meaningless. And so I think intent is probably one of the greatest proofs that there is a creator, that there has to be a God. You know, probability and everything aside of things happening randomly, the intent when you look at how the creation interacts with each other, how there's just everything's got its place and everything coordinates with each other, and how the created order all works together. Although, you know, obviously we're going in a bad direction with what's happening with humanity, but that's all self-fulfilling and self-perpetuating. And so, you know, I hope I've given you some information to think about. I want to close with what we're going to do the next 2 weeks. I'm going to be opening up this book here, the Bible, and maybe not opening it up so much, but I want to talk about, is this a credible source of information? You know, it's the book of our faith, but how much historical reliability, how much scientific reliability, archaeological reliability really can be put to the credibility of this being a viable book, instruction manual, as we call it, for life. And also, you know, kind of nuances to be able to look through how this was put together, who put it together, the time frame, and many things that are written that are unexplained, that there just may be something supernatural about this book and how it was put together. And so at the last minute or so, I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank Motorcycle Mike, Mike Levine, Hauppauge, New York. I want to thank Sharon Gillette and One Stitch at a Time. I also want to thank Samantha Tetro from Samantha's Little Bit of Heaven. We don't have a commercial for that one, but she's invested in our show a little bit. And so I have her address here of her coffee house. It's called Samantha's Little Bit of Heaven. If you want a nice, relaxing night out, you and your wife, you and your girlfriend, some nice music. Sometimes they have comedy. Sometimes they have people who share some faith discussions. They're located 287 Larkfield Road in East Northport, New York. Their phone number, if you want to call, see what's going on, is 631-262-1212. And if you want to contribute to the work of the Biker Church or to this program, you can go to rushingwindbc.org, hit donate, and donate to the cause. Or you could text, if you like technology, you can text GIVE to 631-352-7773. Again, this is Answers from Mars Hill. I'm Pastor Ski from the Rushing Wind Biker Church in Holbrook, New York, 10 Peachtree Court, Holbrook, New York. Check our website, our services. And until next week, God bless you all, and let's have a conversation and reason together.